get your name on.
George Marston. George Richard Marston.
Okay. What year were you born?
1937.
Okay. What? Do you know what day of the week that was by chance?
No, it was the September the 7th. I do not know what day of the week that was.
All right. Did your parents tell you anything about significantly about your birth that day?
No.
No. Okay. Where were you born?
Maryville, Tennessee.
Maryville, Tennessee. All right. Do you know why you were given your first and middle names?
I'm assuming that George was the name of my mother's dad, and Richard was my dad's name.
The perfect combo.
Mm-hmm.
So George Thompson, all right,
Right.
was your mother's dad,
Right.
and Richard Marston, your dad. Charles Richard Marston.
Charles Richard, right.
There's a lot of Richards we will go
Yeah.
through. Do you remember what your first vivid memory is?
I'm not sure if it's my memory or things I've been told, but my first memory of such is a fire behind the house where we were living. There was a Exxon, or Esso rather, storage unit there, a huge tank that caught on fire and was blazing out the end of the tank. And my dad grabbed me up, and he and my mom and I ran up the block about, half a block away, where we stood and watched that fire shooting out of the tank. And I've been told that there was a man that climbed up on top of the tank, straddled the area where the fire was, and was able to put a cap on the blaze, which extinguished the fire. Now then, whether I remember all of that, or whether I've been told that,
Yeah,
I
fill
really
in
don't
some
know.
of the blanks, right?
Right.
How old do you think you were when that was going on?
Probably around 2 to 3, somewhere
wow,
in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, that's one of those. I kind of remember some things around 3, but I'm not sure if I remember it or it's the pictures,
Right.
whatever. But that's a good memory. What was your house like that you grew up in? You know how many bedrooms and bathrooms and that kind of thing?
I have no idea. I really don't remember.
You don't remember anything about your bedroom specifically?
No. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of neighborhood do you think it was you grew up?
It was semi industrial, because there was this big Exxon place right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
There were houses on one side of us. The other side was an open field, if I remember right.
Gotcha. All right. So tell me about your parents. Do you know where they were born?
Dad was born in Ohio, Loveland, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mother was born in, well, we just found out, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I always thought it was in New York, but it's
Pennsylvania, right.
Mm-hmm.
We know when they were born because of the records
Right.
we were looking at, like back on the ancestry.com.
Right.
Who was more strict, your mom or your dad?
Oh, my dad, definitely.
Dad? You have any memories of something that you did that you were disciplined for as a kid, specifically, or just general stuff?
I can't say that I was disciplined, but I can remember when I was a young teenager, I had a motorcycle, and I was riding across the back of a lot behind the high school. It was a dirt lot, not a parking lot. And I knocked the muffler off of my motorcycle, and I thought, man, that sounds cool. So I went on home. And when Dad heard the motorcycle pulling into the driveway, he came out. What in the world is all this racket? I said, I lost my muffler. Where did you lose it? I told him, let's go get it right now. So we went and got the muffler, and I reinstalled it on the motorcycle.
Makes sense.
That was the kind of father that I had.
Mm-hmm.
There was another time when I was wanting to go play some ball with some kids, and he was putting in a water heater, and he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going up to the park to play ball. No, you're going up to the attic to help me install this water heater. So I did.
Exactly. How did your family earn money? Do you remember what your dad did?
My dad was, when I first born, he worked for the Alcoa aluminum plant, and then later he was a teacher of diversified occupations, which is a program where a person goes to school half a day and works a half a day. And then he retired, or died rather, as the head of a vocational school in Bristol, Tennessee.
Gotcha. And Grandma didn't work.
No, mother did not work.
Okay.
Outside the home.
Outside the home. Now, she did the candy striper stuff.
Yeah.
Later.
Right.
I remember that. Volunteer work.
Right.
You know what kind of things that your family spent money on? You didn't have a lot of stuff laying around?
No. No, I know we didn't even have a car until we moved to Johnson City. And then it's when my grandfather Marston died. Dad got his old car. He was probably 10 years old at that time. I don't remember. I think it was a Chevrolet of some sort.
So was it a matter of being frugal, or just a matter of not having the money to spend?
Probably a little bit of both. Dad was pretty frugal. When he finally got the job in Jackson, then he had to have a good car. So that's when he bought a better car.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I think I already know this, but how many brothers do you have?
3.
You got 3 brothers.
All younger.
All younger. That's right. You were the oldest. What specific? Let's see. What kind of memories do you have of? Let's start with Charles first, since he was the next oldest, right?
Again, this is something I was told that I'd said. I don't remember it, but I do remember having looked at a catalog and seeing different pictures of people with clothes and all that kind of clothing catalog. And when Charles was born, my first look at him was when he was in a cradle or in a bed, covered up to his neck, to his chin. And I asked Mom, is there any more to him than that? Or is that all there is?
There's a little bit more, I guess.
Right.
Now he's a musician, right?
Right.
And has been since high school,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, at least since high school, right.
Okay. And that's another thing you didn't mention, that Grandma was a musician, and Pop sang in the choir. Did he play any instruments? Seems like I saw a picture of him with a ukulele or something at one point.
I don't know how well he played it, but I think I have seen pictures of him with one, but I never saw him play anything.
I think that was kind of a fad in the 20s in college, was the ukulele and the bearskin coats and all that stuff, which is really weird. But Grandma played organ and piano throughout forever, as far as I know. So Charles kind of inherited the musical side, but you played an instrument in high school, right?
In high school band, I played. Started off with trumpet, and then I was put on what's called a mellophone. It looks like a French horn, but it's got valves and keys valves rather than keys. Like a French horn has keys. But I played those 2 instruments in high school.
But you didn't follow up with any instruments after that?
No, in fact, the trumpet's in there in the closet in the bedroom.
And it's still there. A little beat up, but it's there.
It's
I do remember playing with that as a kid.
Right.
So that was Charles. He was the musician. So what about Jimmy? Jimmy, we know, is a little bit of a troublemaker sometimes. He's redhead.
Jimmy is he's a redhead, and he can get you in trouble if he puts his mind to it. I'm not sure what Jim ended up doing for a living. He worked for the Virginia Highway Department, and at first he was on the road outside with the department, but then he ended up in the office, I think.
Department of Transportation there.
That's really all I know about him.
So it seems like there were some kind of stories of, a fork in the back of the hand at dinner time.
Right, he was reaching for the potatoes, mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pictures of him as a little boy, and he does look like he might be a bit of a handful.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah, the time that he and Charles were wrestling, and one of them fell down the basement stairs, broken arm.
Nice.
I'm not sure which one broke the arm or not. But,
and of course, then Robin came along quite a bit later.
12 years after me, yeah.
Yeah, so he was the baby.
Right. And he was always the me too. In other words, when I was doing something, or Charles and I was doing something, he always wanted to go with us. Me too, me too. And we try to get rid of him.
Of course, the little brother.
Right.
Do you remember anything about your grandparents as you were growing up, going to visit or anything like that?
I can remember visiting my grandparents, Marston grandparents, and
now they lived in Knoxville area.
Fountain City, Knoxville, out of the suburb of Knoxville. And grandfather was a Presbyterian preacher, very strict. And when we would go to visit him, if Sunday afternoon particularly, we would have to stay very quiet and very pretty much out of sight.
Out of way.
Yeah. Right. I remember one time when my cousin Joni and I were both there at the same time, and Joni and I got to throwing magnolia cone things at each other, and we got reprimanded and told we had to come sit on the porch.
Yes. Yeah, I remember some of your cousin names. That was Joni. She was whose daughter?
Dave. Uncle Dave.
Uncle Dave. So.
Yeah, and I just talked to her here recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, finally, she called here. I wasn't here, or no, I was doing something, and Debbie talked to her for quite a while, but got her phone number, so I called her.
That's cool.
We called up on a lot of things.
Yeah, so Uncle Dave had Joni. How many? She had any other cousins?
4 brothers.
4 brothers of Joni.
And Uncle Bill had 2.
Uncle Bill. Now Bill lived in
Washington
D.C. Dave lived up in Pennsylvania, right?
Philadelphia.
Okay.
And of course Aunt Mary was the sister.
And Dandridge, yeah. And they had
3 girls.
3 girls, right?
Which Catherine is now in a home for Alzheimer's.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, this thing just stopped. Oh, that's not good. Change the battery pack. Seriously?
Oh,
no. I don't have a change for the battery pack. Oh, well, we'll have to deal with that, and I bet it's going to shut off too. Looks like it did.
Got a red light.
So we got some video, but we get the audio. We got the rest of this on audio. Yeah, so I was thinking about them trying to come up with this ancestry stuff. That I know there's several cousins you had. And I
think Uncle Bill has 2 daughters, or maybe a daughter and a son. I'm not real sure.
Now, it seemed like
I've never met them.
I was gonna say, didn't Bill die fairly young? I don't know. It seemed like one of Pop's brothers or something died young, but
I really don't know. Uncle Dave died probably pretty decent age.
Yeah, I remember. I think when he passed away, because that was something we didn't go up there.
But,
no. Now I do remember also when grandmother Marston passed away. I was very little, but we went to the funeral there. I remember going to the house.
Yeah, she was in her 90s.
Yeah, she was pretty old.
Yeah.
Now there's a story too, the family story about the sheep thing and getting that killed. And that the farm, is that the farm? It seems like I remember we drove up to some place and it was all run down. It wasn't, nobody was in it. It was just a property, a farmhouse.
Right. Big old
big house too.
Wooden house, right?
Yeah, fairly large too. I don't. What was that? That's
out of New Market, Tennessee, which is close to Jefferson City.
Okay.
And I think that was my grandmother Marston's family farm.
Okay, so that wasn't the farm.
No, that wasn't the farm.
The Marstons moved into.
No, I don't know where that was.
Yeah, that'd be cool to figure out
Yeah.
where they were. But yeah, I remember the abandoned house basically
Right.
that we went to one time on a vacation trip. Let's see here. Do you have any pets when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, I had Friday.
Friday, the dog.
A dog.
I saw pictures of you guys with the dog.
Yeah, and we had other dogs along, but Friday was the main one.
Okay.
She lived to be about 14 or 15 years old.
That's a pretty decent age for a dog.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty wide open question. What were you like as a child? What did you like to eat? What did you do for fun? What were your favorite toys or games?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, what did you like to do when you were a kid, basically? You said something about playing ball. You like that?
Yeah, but not a whole lot really. I wasn't much of an athlete.
Yeah.
I enjoyed riding a bicycle.
Okay.
And
graduated to a motorcycle.
Graduated a motorcycle and then went to a motor scooter. But from 8 or 9, it was mostly on a bicycle, traveling around Johnson City.
Maryville.
Johnson City, yeah, Johnson City.
Johnson City. So you moved to Johnson City when you were born in Maryville?
Yeah, I was about 6 years old, I think.
Okay, so you're still pretty young.
Yeah. And I remember my best friend Paul Ward and I one year decided we were going to cut grass for make some money, and we had a wagon that I could tie on the back of my bicycle, and put hedge clippers and rakes and that kind of stuff in it, and then we had a push lawnmower that we could tie on the back of Paul's bicycle, and we went around the neighborhood trying to get work.
Nice.
And we did some work, made a little bit of money.
What'd you spend it on?
Candy.
Okay. You didn't go to movies or anything like that?
Do what now?
Did you go to movies or anything?
No.
Not particularly?
No.
So no particular favorite toys or games or anything like that?
No, not really. Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of stuff like that. And I'm assuming you did not get an allowance?
No, definitely not.
I didn't think you would have.
No.
Do you know, so school stuff. Were you a good student?
No. I was a very reluctant student.
All right. Did you have a favorite subject? Or least favorite subject? Well, wood shop probably.
Wood shop was fun, and metal shop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed metal shop in high school. English was the worst thing in the world for me. I failed that 3 times. Finally graduated in the summer after the rest of the classes graduated. Because I had to go to summer school to get my English finished up.
Yeah, well, you speak English fairly well. You must have stuck. Yeah, so not interested in school at best, right?
Right, exactly.
Did you have any heroes or role models when you were a child?
No, I don't think so. I can't think of anything that would be a role model or a hero.
Okay. How did you spend any summer holidays? What was your favorite thing to do for summer? Did your family go on vacation, stuff like that?
Yeah, occasionally we'd have a summer where we'd go somewhere. I remember mostly going to the farm in Dandridge.
So camping or something else too. But did you camp with Pop at all, or that was later?
I don't remember camping as a child. In fact, I can't really remember a whole lot of camping done with family.
So, but you take trips to family houses and things like that, like up to New York. You mentioned going to see.
Yeah, that was Mother's
Thompson's,
idea. Mm-hmm.
Right?
She wanted to go to visit her grandmother, I think.
Her mom was still living up there too. Edna and Lillian. Lillian was her grandmother, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And it was her mother.
And she was a crotchety old woman.
Yes, they look crotchety in the pictures. I was curious about that. I'm assuming celebrated holidays just like everyone else did back then, as far as Christmas, church
Right.
services, etc.
Yeah.
Any other traditions that you guys ever did, or that you know of, or just the standard stuff?
I can't think of any particular traditions that we had. No.
Okay. What did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up, or what did you think you wanted to be when you were a kid? Do you know?
I don't think I ever gave it a thought. I think that I ended up in the telephone company purely by accident.
Okay. Yeah, that became the rest of your life.
Yeah, I did.
What big world events do you remember from when you were growing up? I mean, you were how old when World War II started? That was 41, so you would have been really young.
No, I was 37, so I was, what, 4 years old?
4, yeah. Do you remember anything about that?
No, I really don't.
What other big world events do you remember at all?
When JFK was shot, I remember that.
So that was 63. I was already on the scene by then.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else was going on at the time, but anyway, all right.
My dad never served in the military because of when the war broke out. We were still in Alcoa, and he was working for the Alcoa Aluminum Company, so that was considered a prior
defense job, so to speak.
So he was exempt from the draft.
So they kind of retooled everything for war stance at that point, right? Okay. Okay. When you were a teenager, what did you do for fun?
Teenager?
Yeah. Did you have a spot to hang out, to do things away from home, or did you get into any trouble?
No.
Other than the motorcycle?
Right. I think when I was a teenager, I was working. I was probably 14 when I went to work for a drugstore. I was a soda jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, was that in Jackson?
That was in
that
Jackson.
Point?
Right.
That's what I thought.
On North Royal. So really, my teenage years were
School and work.
School and work, right.
In marching band. Didn't y'all take a trip to New York?
Went to Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Was it a parade you were in?
Yeah, it was a Lions Day or Lions parade.
Lions Club.
Lions Club parade,
okay.
Yeah.
I think I've seen some pictures from that.
Yeah, that was a miserable trip. Or a miserable parade. It was hot in the wool uniforms.
Oh gosh, yeah, those uniforms are not comfortable.
No.
Do you remember when you learned how to drive and who taught you?
Dad. My dad taught me. Oh, I was probably 15.
This was in Jackson again, I assume.
Yeah, but most of it actually was at the camp up on Center Hill Lake, camp up there.
Mm-hmm.
He had me driving the Army truck, big 4x4 Army truck.
That's quite a car to learn to ride on.
And a Caterpillar.
Wow. With treads and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
It was a small Caterpillar.
But it was like a Bobcat.
Yeah, like a Bobcat. I can remember one time we were coming up the road to the camp, and there was a curve, and you had to pull the levers to turn. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get the lever pulled, and I was heading up the bank going like this. Dad jumped off and came running up there and killed the engine.
Yeah, that's something you don't want to flip over.
No.
I assume they use that to clear trails and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, pretty gnarly up there with the
And I
woods.
can remember when I was driving the truck and I was delivering some supplies to one of the groups that were working, and there there was a little tree behind me, and I was backing up, and this guy was hollering, Mr. Elmore. He was hollering at me, whoa, don't, stop. And I leaned out the window. I said, it's a little tree. I can go over that, all right? No, stop. And I backed right over that tree. Also his lunchbox.
Oh, yeah. That's good stuff.
As my dad said, Mr. Elmore raised more L.
Over his lunchbox. I don't blame him. Probably had a good lunch in there. Yeah. What was your graduation from high school like? Did you graduate with everybody else because of summer school?
No, I graduated after summer school.
Okay, so you didn't get to walk.
I didn't walk.
All right. Mom walked, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think so.
At the same time you were supposed to, right?
Right.
All right, because there's pictures of y'all in your cap and gown and all.
Yeah, I borrowed that from some guy. I don't really know. Hawk, I think was his name.
But it looks appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving along now to adulthood stuff. Again, I'm not going to ask all this stuff.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff here. I know the answer to this, but did you go to university or college? No. You joined immediately, pretty much, and you got a job at the phone company at 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like right out of high school.
Yeah, I actually enrolled at Lambeth College, and I went for one semester, cut every class except English for some stupid reason.
The one that you...
The one I hated worse than anything else. But the teacher in there was really good, and she was kind, and tried to help me. But that one semester was all I could handle.
Okay, well that's funny with English.
Yeah, and I remember the people there, the upperclassmen, telling us we had to wear this little beanie thing, or else we'd get thrown in the fish pond.
You're a freshman, right?
Yeah. And I told them I wasn't going to wear a beanie, and I wasn't going to get thrown in the fish pond either. And they didn't try.
Yeah, that's good.
I was a pretty big kid at that time.
Yeah. So we'll probably find some records of your Lambeth College days somewhere along the way.
I don't know.
Well, you were officially enrolled, so that'd be 1955, 55, right?
55, yeah, it'd be the...
Because you graduated 55.
Right, it'd be the fall of 55.
Okay. I know you didn't serve in the military.
No.
You fell right between all the different wars. After World War II, a little too young for Korea, and then I think a little older and had kids during Vietnam.
Oh yeah, in the Bay of Pigs, I was...
again, 62, 60, something years.
I had at least one child then.
How did you decide what you wanted to do with your life?
By accident.
You got a job?
It happened that I put in an application with the phone company, and the person that was doing the hiring at that point went to church with us and was a good friend of my dad's. So they called me in. I'll never forget when I walked in that door, there was, can't remember his name now, but anyway, he was sitting at a chair off to the side of the desk, and Mr. Knight was the guy who was actually interviewing me. I walked in the door and I stood there. It seemed like for hours, but it was probably maybe 2 minutes or something like that. They just stared at me. And finally, Mr. Knight turned to Shaq, that's his name, Shaq Cashin, and said, he's a big one, isn't he? Shaq said, oh yeah, he's a big one. I was about 210 pounds at that time, 6 feet tall. So I did look pretty big. It turned out I wasn't all that big after all, but anyway, they hired me.
Okay.
Sent me to climbing school and all that.
The climbing school, was that in Jackson too?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed the climbing school. I just took to it like I'd always been doing it. In fact, I can remember one time when they had us standing up on a pole with a cross arm and the beams that came down that supported the cross arm. And they had us standing there for, seemed like for a long time anyway. I finally got tired of standing. I unhooked my belt, put it around the pole above the V, and kick my climbers out of the pole and set, leaning against the pole. And the guy that was the pole teacher looked up there at me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm resting. I'm tired of standing here." He just shook his head and walked away.
Well, yeah. You figured out how well to do that, so that's fun. And Ken, you were basically a kid.
Yeah, I was.
Still. Now, you seem like I remember you telling a story about sliding down a pole.
Oh, I did that a number of times.
Accidentally ripping your shirt off. And
oh, yeah, tearing up my shirt. And
splinters all up
splinters up and down my upper arm and my chest.
Trying to hug the
pole, which is the last thing in the world you want to do. You want to just to kick away and free fall.
Slide quickly down, yeah.
Right. No, you don't.
Without touching anything,
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that was your first job. That was basically your first job, right? And then that was your.
Actually, I had worked for dry cleaners.
Well, you were also soda jerk.
Yeah, well, that was before.
That was well before.
Yeah.
You said you were about 14 when you started.
About 14, maybe 14 to 16. I was a soldier, and then I got a job at a cleaners. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I was on a truck, and we would deliver clothes, different businesses, houses, things like that. And my job was to take the clothes and run up to the house and knock on the door, that kind of thing. But that really wasn't a job as such. It paid, but not much.
Right. But then you got the South Central Bell.
Right.
And the rest, as they say, is history, so to speak. You met Mom at high school.
Right.
That was the first time. You were in regular high school, or was that junior high school? So, what grade?
Probably around the ninth grade.
Ninth grade. So that would be high school then. So you were a freshman in high school. Okay. And I know you guys got married right after school.
Right.
Like
56.
In 56? Okay. So you had already gotten your job at the phone company?
I had my job at the phone company.
Well, then you were very responsible.
Yeah.
Had to have a job first. Did y'all get engaged before that, or was it pretty much engaged and get married immediately?
I don't think, we never considered ourselves engaged as such. We were just good friends and lovers, and
assumed that was going to happen.
That was going to happen, yeah.
Right. Okay.
I can remember when we got married, and we looked for a place to live, and we found a duplex. It was a 3-room, had a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom, a bath somewhere in that area. That was in Jackson. Then and it was $25 a month, and I got transferred to Memphis. We finally found a place to live, Stribling Apartments, and that was $55 a month. And when I transferred, I did not get a raise, so that really stressed the budget.
Yeah, it's twice as much for the cost.
Right.
Yeah, I found actually the records of when y'all lived there. They were called, for some reason, they were called Kennedy View Apartments on Stribling.
Yeah, I guess they would be, because they were across the street from.
They weren't even near Kennedy View Hospital, though.
Oh, no,
Kennedy Hospital. They're off of Getwell there, right across the ditch.
Just across the.
I even found a photograph of the actual building y'all were in. Okay. You were in apartment 4B. Upstairs on the right, I assume.
Hotter than the Dickens.
Yeah, it's funny because I looked this stuff up and I just did a search. I know what the apartments are now, and I put the exact address that was listed for you guys in 57, and it pulled up that picture of that building, and that's the same building y'all were in.
Yeah, we when I came to Memphis, they transferred me from a lineman to a cable helper, which was a cut and pay. But since I was already being paid more than a cable helper was,
they maintained
maintained my pay scale, which, of course, like I said, the apartment cost twice as much as the place in Jackson.
Sure, cost of living in Memphis was a bit more too.
Considerably more, right? And I can remember my dad and mother visiting one time, and it was in the summertime. It was hotter than the dickens up there, and Dad went out and bought a water cooler type fan, the type of box fan you pour water in, and it supposedly was cool moisture in the air.
Right.
It helped a little bit, but not a whole lot.
I think you still had that thing when I was a kid.
Yeah,
it was out in the shop.
Yeah, I think we did.
It worked for a long time.
Yeah, but that was our air conditioning for the apartment there.
Now, wasn't there a problem with roaches at one point where it seemed like Mom told me about calling to have things sprayed and the roaches went downstairs and they sprayed and they came back upstairs.
Right.
So you kind of had a fight between neighbors and migrating roaches and having to put aluminum foil on the windows so you could sleep during the day.
Yeah, because I was on night shift at that time.
Yeah, that's always fun. And then Bob came along while y'all were living there, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, how long did he stay there before y'all moved to Prescott?
You know, I can't remember. He was probably 3, maybe something like that when we moved to.
Okay, so he lived in those apartments with y'all for about 3 years.
Yeah, something like that. He, the only reason we got that house on Prescott was because Clyde's cousin owned it, and he was moving back to Jackson.
Jimmy Bivens?
Yeah, Jimmy Bivens, right.
He owned the house on Graham, too.
I'm sorry, that's right. It's one on Graham. I don't know.
Like
I don't remember how we got
just
on
a rental or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just a rental house.
Okay. Because I was born while you're still at Prescott.
Yeah.
And moved when I was like 6 months old or so to the Graham house. But so yeah, I know who the children are because I'm one of them.
Right.
Bob. How did you decide on the name Robert Bryan for Bobby?
I had a good friend who was named Robert, and I like that name. So we stuck Robert on. I don't know where the Bryan came from.
Yeah, because that's the different one. It's spelled with a Y too, which is a little different than IAN. Seems like y'all's best man, best woman, or whatever, matron of honor at your wedding was somebody that became a teacher at Bethel, the matron of honor. And I had her for like English or something there. Yeah.
I can't remember that. I remember the best man was a Cumberland preacher. What was his name? I can't remember his name now.
Yeah. How did I end up with John David?
John is a gift from God.
Yeah.
I don't know where David came from, but that was our emphasis for naming you John.
Okay. I thought y'all had a friend named John too at some point. Maybe that was the Bobby story I was thinking about. Yeah, that was
Bob's story.
Okay, gotcha. Let's see. I don't know how many children you had. You had 2. I'm trying to think. Okay, what do you remember about when I was born, or when Bobby was born? Either one of us. Anything specific?
When Bob was born, I was working in.
You were still in Jackson, weren't you?
We're living in Jackson,
57, yeah.
And I was on the road with the phone company working in Somerville, I believe it was. And I was home for the weekend, or what we do, we would go out on Mondays and spend Monday night and Tuesday night in the motel, and then Wednesday night we would go home and get up earlier Thursday and drive back to where we was working. And I happened to be home when Clyde went into labor and took her to the hospital, and 13 hours later Bob was born.
That's Madison General Hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Jackson.
And when you were born, in February, and it was an ice storm. And I remember Dr. McGee saying, "You need to get to the hospital while you can before the roads get impassable." And she was close enough, so we went fairly quickly. You came.
Seem to remember on the birth certificate it says I was born like 5 minutes before February 5th.
Okay.
It was like 11:55 p.m. almost the next day. So what kind of, do you remember what kind of cars y'all had, anything like that? I'm thinking our stories about a car that burned a lot of oil.
That was the Studebaker.
Studebaker, yes.
It was one of those Studebakers that could be going either direction. The front end and the back end looked so much alike.
Is that a Skylark?
I think it was a Skylark.
I'm trying to remember the name of that.
You know, I can't remember now, but we drive from Memphis to Jackson. We'd burn probably 4 quarts of oil.
Wow.
Yeah, if we stop and when we get to Jackson, we fill that oil back up and make it home.
So you're laying down a pretty good oil slick on the way.
Right.
And a nice smoke screen as well.
Actually,
I'm sure.
it wasn't smoking. It was just leaking
dripping
out.
it out. Wow, that's nice. And so.
And then I had a DeSoto, a 2-seater. Actually, it was a 4-seater, but it was 2-door and a sloping back, so the back seat was fairly small.
Right.
And I know when it was my turn to drive to the job site, a couple of guys that rode with us would complain about the back seat being kind of tight.
A DeSoto.
It was a fluid drive. In other words, you didn't have to shift. You could start off and drive.
Sort of an automatic.
Kind of an automatic. If you started off, it would start off real slow, and then eventually it'd pick up and start moving. Or you could shift it into the low gear, and then it would jackrabbit it, and then stop and slow down again.
What year was that? You know,
51 or 2.
The model car.
Yeah.
Interesting. Doesn't sound like a very good.
No, it wasn't a great transportation.
Idea about that. Let's see. So, all right. Let's get this identity stuff here. So, do you know the meaning of the family name?
I have been told that Marston means is a farmer. Means farmer. I have no idea whether that's true or not.
I've also seen where it is an Old English term for marshy town.
Okay.
And it indicates a place where you were from. Basically, this area is a marshy town, so you're Marston.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense than a farmer, actually.
Yeah, and I've read those fairly recently, actually. Did you have any nicknames as a child or an adult? Oh, yeah, you did.
Huh?
Yeah, you did. I remember an adult nickname.
What, Bullet?
Bullet.
Yeah, right.
Bullet.
That was Ike White's nickname for me.
And why was that?
He said my head looked like a bullet.
Says something about wearing those hard hats, right? They would stay up on top of your head instead of sit down on it. Let's see. How are you like your mother? Do you know?
How am I like my
How
mother?
are you like your mother?
I have no idea.
I don't know either. Or how are you like your father? Besides the physical, you look like him.
Yeah, physically I look a little bit like him. Temperament. I think I'm a little bit like he was. I consider myself to be lenient, but also pretty strict.
Yeah, you expect behavior to be good.
Right.
And I only remember getting spanked like once. And that's all it really required to get the idea.
I can't remember, was it you or Bob that went down to visit a friend?
That was my brother.
Okay, yeah, and he didn't show up, and I went looking for him and made him coming up the block.
He went bowling.
Yeah, he went bowling.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Okay.
I remember that very well. That was an ugly night.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, he was Chris Combs.
Yeah, that's it.
Up
exactly.
the street, and they were hanging out. This is an odd one. Do you feel like you're like any of your grandparents, but you didn't really know? You knew your grandfather pretty well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I knew both my grandparents.
Yeah, both
well.
sets. Yeah, actually.
Other than being Presbyterian, I can't say that I'm very much like either one of my grandparents.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ministers and teachers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the family background, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are your children like you?
You'd have to answer that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think I look like
you've got the Marston look.
Oh yeah.
Bob has a Warren look.
Yeah, he does. He looks like Papa.
He would definitely pass for Papa, right?
Mm-hmm. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, it's Pop. Dad. Especially with the beard, it makes a big difference. Okay, this is fun. What are your 3 best qualities?
Oh, gosh.
Or what's your best quality, do you think?
I had no idea.
Or what's your worst quality? Best quality, worst quality? Which is easier to answer?
I guess smoking is my worst quality.
Well, you've been doing that since what? You were
17 years
17
old.
Years old?
Off and on.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my best quality is I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty straightforward with people.
But more so when you get older?
Yeah, probably more so as I get older, right? That's pretty much it.
Which do you think you have the most of? Talent, intelligence, education, or persistence?
Persistence, probably.
Persistence, all right.
Definitely not education.
Right. Well, you educated yourself a lot.
I did. I read an awful lot. I've got a new Bible that is a really interesting book. I've just got it yesterday. I haven't really read a lot of it yet, but it's got some interesting stuff in the back of it about laws and taxes and all that kind of stuff.
All right. I don't think you have any special sayings or expressions.
No.
Okay, I don't know if I could answer this question. What's your favorite book and why?
This probably sounds something, I don't know what. I'm going to say the Bible is my favorite book. Because I teach Sunday school, so I need to study, and I find studying the Bible to be interesting, but also inspirational. So yeah, I'd have to say the Bible is my favorite book. I enjoy biographies, particularly presidential biographies or important people biographies,
right.
That type of thing.
Historical characters.
Yeah, historical, definitely historical.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of a tough one. I mean, I know the Bible is it's a good one to, it's what's formed most of your thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Forever, so yeah, it makes sense. But genre-wise, you prefer biographies over novels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you have a favorite movie, do you?
No.
Okay. 3 people in history, or just somebody in history that you admire most? And if this goes along with the Bible thing. But no, actual historical.
I like Eisenhower. He was a good general, and as president, he was adequate. But as reading his history, his biographies, and that type of thing, I found him to be very interesting. Who else? Jefferson Davis. He was an interesting man.
Mm-hmm.
Three people.
Yeah, it's all right. We got three great. If not, we can go home.
Okay, go ahead.
We already kind of talked about biggest news events during your lifetime and what you thought of as that. I'm going to switch this around. It says if you could travel into the future, what would you rather see? How about if you could go back in time, what would be the event or person or place or thing you would like to be able to see?
I would like to see the end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler's people surrender, and then Japan surrender. Those would be interesting things to see.
Anybody from history you'd like to have met or meet? I have several.
Yeah. Benjamin Franklin would be an interesting person to see.
Oh, yes, he would.
He was sort of his own man, that's for
free
sure.
spirit, shall we say.
Yeah. Mark Twain would be another interesting person to see.
Yep. Depending on what time of his life you met him in, it could be interesting more. So
Right.
Got a little bitter at the end, but yeah, I'd like to see him too. All right, what else? I can't remember what memorable phone call you've ever received.
Good night.
I mean, I don't think I've gotten too many earth-shattering phone calls.
No.
Is there one thing that you've always wanted to do but haven't been able to do or won't be able to do that you can think of? It's the little bucket list idea, I guess. What's on your bucket list that hasn't been filled? Visiting any specific places or doing any kind of going to any events of some kind, or
there's some places I'd like to go to,
but nothing just jumping out at you.
No, not really. I've seen the Grand Canyon. I've seen Yellowstone.
Those are biggies.
Yeah, well, those are two biggies. I've been to what do you call it? Fossil place. What's it called? The trees.
Oh, the petrified forest.
Petrified forest. I've been there.
It's all cool out west. All right. Obviously, I know about your hobbies. You're particularly good with woodworking. What did you like about working with wood and building stuff?
Just the fact that I could take a piece of wood and make it look like something else.
Transform it.
Right. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the completion of a project makes it feels good.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the china closet in there in the dining room.
Well, didn't you do this?
And this.
We're sitting at a counter, by the way.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the way I feel about drawing stuff. When I start a drawing and when I finish it, it's a good feeling to actually go follow through with something.
Yeah.
But it was a good hobby. You spent a lot of time out in the shop.
A lot of time. Right.
Out there with the wood burning stove. And, the music would vary from country music to opera to
not opera.
It was on Saturday occasionally.
Yeah,
you leave it on 600.
I just leave it there.
And what was else? The UT Vols network was also on 600, I think, at the time. So that would all kind of be playing in the background as a soundtrack to
to
your
the
woodworking.
to
The saw.
table saws and all that other stuff. Yeah.
And that's one of the gifts I did not inherit is the building of things. Bob has got the builder gene.
Yeah.
I tried, but never did get good at it. So now we're talking about the present now. So what's a typical day for you like now?
Just very boring.
So how old are you now? That's a good
81.
point. You're 81. All right.
Uh,
So you're older than most of the men in your family so far.
Right.
As we've gone through these records, it's
Right.
like most of them are gone in their 60s.
Yeah.
So you are taking after grandma on this side.
Right. And my grandmother Marston.
The typical day, though, is
A typical
kinda
day
dull.
is very dull, actually. I get up in the morning, I put a cup of coffee on, I get the paper, and I sit at the dining room table, and I read the entire thing, and drink 2 cups of coffee, 2 half cups actually. But anyway, and then I usually go into I go make my bed up. Then I go into what I call my office, and I sit there and I read. And that's pretty much it, actually.
Yeah. So that's different from your daily routines in the past.
Considerably.
So after you retired from the phone company, how old were you when you retired?
55.
Yeah, you were young.
Yeah.
So you were younger by a year than I am right now.
Yeah.
I'm 56.
Right. Yeah.
And so you retired early.
You're right. But I had almost 40 years in.
You already had plenty of time in. And that kind of freed you up to do the Puttering for Profit, the Marston and Marston thing with Bob eventually.
Yeah, it started out with just me doing little odd jobs. And then Bob I think he had left wherever he was working. And I got him to help me on a couple of projects. And he decided he liked that. So we formed the Marston Puttering for Profit company. And that stayed, we worked for that till, let's see, that was started in 95. I think we worked for probably 10 years.
Yeah, I'd say
maybe
at
a
least.
little more than that, yeah. And then Bob got him a job where he got some benefits, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of was the hard part of that is the lack of insurance and whatnot.
Right.
So, yeah, because she's got Sheila and Bo on his thing too. So then after you retired again, you've been doing this, but you've also worked with church stuff. You do the room at the inn. Right. And whatever else they need you to do over there. Yeah. I mean, I know you were working at the church, like cleaning up or doing some stuff.
Doing janitor work.
Right. Are you still doing that, or are you kind of backed off of that?
No.
Okay. So I assume what you do for fun now is you read.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You get on the internet every now and then, kind of play around with it.
No, I haven't been on the internet in I don't know how long.
Okay. So computer's not really a big thing.
No, in fact, I can't even get my email to come up anymore.
Uh-oh. All right, maybe I need to look into that. So we can help. So this is awfully difficult. How have your dreams and goals changed through your life? So your dreams and goals, you
know, I never really had a dream or goal.
Right.
I just sort of took life as it came. I was extremely fortunate to be able to get on with the phone company when I did. I almost didn't make it. You have a 6-month trial period.
Probation.
Probation, yeah. And about 2 months after I started, we had been working out country somewhere, hanging 10-pin cross arms. Those suckers weigh about 80 pounds apiece, and they're 10 feet long. You have to pull them up by a rope, and break them across your belt.
This is while you're hanging on a pole.
While I'm standing on a pole, and then put it on a bolt, and put a washer nut on it. And the guys that are on the crew with me were all of them had been there for a number of years, except for one guy who actually went through climbing school with him. But he was a farmer. He worked on the farms, so he had muscles. I was a soda jerk.
Who'd been eating the profit.
Right, who didn't have much in the way of muscle at all. And they were all hanging 3 arms to my 1. And I was, falling way behind. And Shaq Cashin and some other guy, I can't remember his name, called me down from a pole in the car one time and told me that I was going to have to step up or else we're going to have to let you go. And I said, I'll do my very best to step up.
That became your new goal.
So that was definitely my goal, was to at least keep within 2 arms of everybody else. And I managed to do that. In fact, I weighed over 200 pounds when I started in April, and by July I was down to 150 pounds.
Yeah, probably all muscle at that point too.
Much of muscle at that point, yeah.
So you're literally have your climbers dug into the pole. That's what you're balancing yourself on while you're having to haul up 80 pounds on top of that?
Yeah, well, you got just belt around the pole.
Right.
And you
so
can lean back.
Pull a little weight onto
and straighten your legs out and reach down and grab that rope and start pulling till you get the end of the cross arm where you can reach it. You pull it up. I'm left-handed, so you pull it up with your right hand and reach down as far as you can and catch it.
Sling it up on your belt.
On your belt. And you've already drilled your hole and put the bolt in. And so now all you got to do is pick it up and stick it on that bolt.
So you got to make sure your belt is at the right height, though, so that lays up nicely. Right. That doesn't sound like fun work.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I didn't like it much the first 2 or 3 months, but as I became more proficient and put on some strength, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
So you did that kind of work, but then they made you a cable assistant or whatever you call that in Memphis.
Memphis, I became a cable helper. Splicer's helper.
Right.
Not a splicer. And that was...
That's in the manhole stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I ended up on the midnight shift, 11 to 7 at night. And depending on who I was helping, it would be okay. But then again, I might end up helping somebody with pretty aggressive and bossy and that kind of stuff, and that didn't sit well with me.
No.
But finally, I was able to get back. Well, I ended up going in the building, working as a frameman for about a year, I guess. That was a miserable time. Then I was able to get back out as a lineman. And I stayed there for 17 years. Then I became a cable splicer. And I did that for about 11 years. And then I was promoted to management.
Yeah, because I only remember you as the manager, basically.
Yeah, right.
You were driving the little truck and bringing it home, having to park it out on the street.
Right. And getting called out in the middle of the night and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when drunks run over poles and stuff. Yeah. I seem to remember you saying something about you were working during when MLK, Martin Luther King, was assassinated.
Yeah, we were in the black part of town down in Mississippi. I can't remember the cross street now, but anyway, we didn't know anything about what was going on, and the boss came up and told us to wrap it up, get out of there, get your truck out of here as quick as you possibly can. So we had a splice open in the manhole, and we put rubber tape around it, sealed it, got up,
took off,
left.
So what was going on? That was when the riots started.
Right, they were rioting.
And that's not too far. I mean, Mississippi's pretty close to downtown.
Yeah, it was.
It was just
about a mile
shy of the medical district.
Right.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
That's something. Now that's an event you probably remember pretty well. Then.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that event.
And all the stuff that went on afterwards. And
now that you mention it like that, I remember it. Right.
Yeah, you put it in context of what was going on. So that's interesting. I assume you eventually went back down and finished the work. or somebody did.
Somebody did. I don't remember going back down there, but I'm sure somebody went back down there and sealed that up.
Do you remember how long it took for things to settle down in Memphis after that?
I don't remember having a whole lot of problems with anything going on. That was the immediate reaction for when the rioting started.
Right.
Get out of there, and get out of that part of town, particularly. But then I don't remember anything going on that disturbed my work.
Yeah, it just seems like that. There were other cities that had a lot worse.
Oh yeah.
Rioting, which is ironic since it happened in Memphis.
Right, it is.
But yeah, because I was curious as a person you were what, probably 30?
Yeah,
maybe
like
at that point in that area, because that was 68. Because I was around, I was like 5 or so. I don't remember anything about it at all except for what you told me about having to get out of town, out of that part of town.
That part of town, right.
So yeah, I do remember you working and moving different places. You worked at down close to the airport.
Yeah.
On Republican.
Yeah.
There's right off a Democrat.
Right.
Republican's the small little street off of the big street, Democrat, which tells you a lot about Memphis too.
Yeah, I worked all over Memphis.
There's that one place you worked off of Highland, right near South Highland. That phone company's right near Aunt Toots's house.
Right. I never worked out of that particular. Yeah, I did too. I worked out of that.
Seemed like you did.
What you call it?
I don't know what they call it. Office.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, that's another part of town that's sure changed in time. Aunt Toots's house was on South Highland,
right?
And it's a mess down there now.
Is it really?
Terrible.
And been through there in a long time.
Her house looks like it's about to fall over.
Yeah.
And then the one I remember most, and I think it's where you retired from, was the one out off of Summer.
Right. Old Summer Road.
Near the expressway. Yeah. That was when you were in management and not enjoying the changes in the company.
No,
I don't believe.
I wasn't crazy about the computers and having to email my boss, who was 100 feet away from me, and he couldn't take the time to get up and walk down to my office.
Yeah.
That kind of got to me.
Yeah, and it seems like one of your bosses at the very end of it was very young.
Yeah, Kenny.
Yeah, because he had a recording studio thing in his house, or somebody that you knew, one of those guys associated to his.
Really? I don't remember that.
Because I went out to his house and he recorded me singing.
Oh, really?
This was like 85-ish or so. Yeah, but he was one of your, I think he was the boss at one point, because that was when you were starting to kind of butt heads with him a little bit. It's like old school, new school, not working out so well. Right. Didn't they change over to, or were getting ready to change over to like fiber cable or?
Yeah, I was actually on the start of that.
Fiber optics.
Fiber optic cable. That was a big thing for me. My crew was the first ones in Memphis to splice fiber optic cable. And when we first did it, you had to use a microscope.
Wow.
To splice it.
That's a lot different than taking a handful of wires and tying them up. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I see your sign up there, the Marston's Misfits.
Yeah, that was
your crew. Yeah.
Right. The fiber optics is probably one thing that led to me retiring. I enjoyed the work with fiber optics, but they would send my crews to school, but they wouldn't let me go.
Which how are you going to direct them if you don't know?
Which didn't make a bit of sense to me.
No.
I thought, if I'm going to lead these people, I need to know what I'm leading them in.
Yeah.
No, we don't. You don't need to go to school. You just need to be a boss.
Yeah, I think they were waiting for you to go out to pasture. It sounds like.
I think so too.
it sounds like corporate work. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
with
it does,
Medtronic.
very much so.
They just run you to your end of your usefulness as they see it and move on. But I mean, getting out of there, and you ended up enjoying the puttering for profit, paying a lot, so that was good. Backing up a little bit, so we used to do those like mission trips,
right?
Like going to Florida and whatnot. Those were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now I saw them more as a kid sees it. I wasn't part of the organization part,
right?
Which I'm sure was a little more involved trying to organize that many people to get time off.
Yeah, they were good. I enjoyed the mission trips. I particularly remember the one out to South Dakota, the Lakota Indians. That was a very interesting trip.
And that was with Colonial, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it was all Colonial. Anyway.
Yeah, because we went to Ruskin, Florida.
Yeah,
right. Mission for Faith.
Yeah. But I remember we were bedded in a church that had a tin roof, and we were up in the top, and it was up getting into the 100 degrees in South Dakota.
Sounds like a baked potato.
Oh man, it was miserable. It was very miserable. But the trip was good. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
You took a trip to Colombia as
South
well?
America, right? Yeah, that was with the Hispanic group. Casa
de Oracion.
Yeah,
Casa de Oracion. I'm terrible Spanish accent.
I'm not good at Spanish at all, but yeah, that was an interesting trip. The pastor of Casa was the one who headed that one up. She and one of her buddies, and there were six Hispanics. Two of them were from Colombia, and I think the rest were from Mexico. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, I remember going through an airport somewhere, and I had this huge suitcase loaded with tools. I was afraid that they were going to confiscate it. And so Blanca went ahead of me and sort of paved the way for me. And so when I got through there, they sent me on through, no problems. And Blanca went off somewhere else, I don't know where. And I ended up being by myself in this, I think it was in Bogota Airport. And I didn't know where to go. And I looked around for somebody from our group, and I couldn't find anybody. Finally, I started wandering, and then I saw Blanca. And I hollered, "Hey, Mama, come here and help me!" And she never let me live that down.
No, I'm sure. So that was in Bogota. Did y'all go to Medellin or just in Bogota?
Medellin. No, we didn't stay in Bogota. We just passed through.
Landed there,
right. And then got into a little prop plane, very small plane.
Yeah.
15 passengers, 20 passengers, something like that.
But kind of countryside there. Is it jungle-ish or?
No, this was mountain country.
Mountain.
Yeah, Bogota is down in the valley. And that's where they raise roses. They got huge at some point. And seeing one of these little statues of Mary.
Oh yeah, lots of Virgin Marys around.
Mary, yeah. And as we passed it, she went, "Pow, pow, 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 pow."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's militantly anti-clank.
Right.
Yeah, and I've not been South America at all. That's an interesting
It's
part
an
of the
interesting
world.
country. When we got to the Medellin or where we worked, that was pretty bad shape because that was a year after the earthquake. And a lot of houses were gone.
Gotcha.
What we were doing were building foundations and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I don't of course, I remember you telling us about those kind of stories, but I don't remember. Or when we went to Ruskin, we were working with the migrant workers.
Yeah.
Doing a Bible school.
Yeah.
For them.
Right. And some other kind of physical labor. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember what we did either. I remember staying at that campground, and the hurricane came through.
Yeah.
Which was exciting.
Yeah.
Not something you really want to have come through when you're on a tidal river necessarily.
And you're in a
tent trailers. Yeah, I remember it did blow one of them over, and not ours. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Ours is a big one now. So let's see what else we got real quick. I think we've been on doing this for an hour and 17 minutes. Don't think any of this life lessons and legacy stuff. This is where it gets kind of, frou-frou and hard to nail down. Do you remember any kind of advice that your grandparents or parents gave you that you remember? Anything specifically? Probably not specific, but
no, I can't remember.
And it seems like you, Pop and Grandma lived the life that you knew they were supposed to live, so to speak, and kind of followed that pattern. So I mean, that's not a direct advice, but it's living the examples.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think my dad taught me the importance of working. He was the kind that would. He wasn't necessarily a carpenter, but he would do any kind of work that came along. Like when we lived in Johnson City. Johnson City. Yeah, we had a big old 2-story house, and he and I put siding on that entire house. That was interesting.
Yeah, that's a chore. Yeah, I seem to remember the house in Bristol. Didn't he build that house or have it built?
The school where he was the instructor built that house. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the school where he taught, and that was where they
actually went. He was not a teacher. He was the head of the school.
Oh, that's right. At that point, he was the director or whatever. And so all the students and the teachers built that house.
Right.
That's cool. Yeah. You never lived in that one. That was well after you were in Memphis at that point. Yeah, I remember him passing away. I remember coming home from school and you were home. I thought that was odd, and saying that Pop had passed away and we were going to hit the road. Yeah. And we pretty much drove straight up there. It's a long drive.
Yeah.
And I remember a little bit about the funeral. Not much.
I don't remember a whole lot about it either, to be honest with you.
I know that you and Mom sent me and Bob home on a Greyhound bus.
Right.
That was quite the adventure.
Yeah.
Very exciting because they had a restroom on it.
All right.
Yeah. We both bought a couple of books. I remember that, and for the trip.
Yeah.
And we rode the Greyhound home.
Now, did you go straight from Bristol to Knoxville to Nashville to Memphis? Okay.
Yeah, it was an all long day.
Yeah. Because I remember one time when Mother came to Memphis to visit, she came by train, and it went to Chattanooga, and then down to somewhere in Georgia. Wow. Somewhere in Mississippi, and then came back into Tennessee and ended up in.
She made the loop.
Made a big loop, yeah. That's why I was wondering about the bus trip.
Yeah, I seem to think that because the expressway was built by then. That was 72, so I think they probably just came straight down the expressway instead of all those highways. Yeah. Yeah, because that was something when you were younger, before the expressways, the main east-west route was Highway 70 all the way. Right. And no expressway to deal with. Lots of little towns to stop in and slow down in.
Yeah. It was a long trip.
I do remember one trip we were driving to Bristol for Christmas, and the car broke down.
Oh yeah.
We had a little.
That pickup truck.
Had Christmas at the
Motel.
Scottish Inn Hotel.
Right.
I found a few pictures of that.
Yeah, Santa Claus found us.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's very he's got it all together.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of camping.
Yeah.
Traveled to pretty much every campground in Tennessee over our camping years, I would think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Rushing Creek, was it?
Yeah, Rushing Creek. Yeah.
Rushing Creek. Which is the one that had the cave that they did music in?
Oh,
what's the name of that place?
Ruskin
Cave.
Yeah. Ruskin. Yeah, that was an interesting place.
Yeah, I remember there was a marching band or something there doing their summer.
Yeah. Oh thing. Yeah, right. Celebrate camp.
It was very annoying at some points.
Yeah.
But yeah, we graduated from a tent camping to the small trailer, and then got the Nimrod.
Right. The Nimrod.
The Nimrod. I love that name. With 3 beds it pulled out, and the mud room and the whole bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of good trips on those.
Yeah.
And I remember going in '76, driving to Canada.
Yeah. Right. I didn't remember what year it was.
It was the bicentennial year, and I was 13. Remember that? Grandma went with us, and I was telling Kim that I seem to recall we just bought that Caprice Classic or the Malibu car, like the day before, practically, like the week of at least. It was very, 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 very new. Loaded up with Grandma and me and Mom and you, and we hit the road north.
Right. Bob was working.
Yeah, Bob had to work. As 6 years older than me, he had more things to do. Yeah. But that was a good trip. That was Gettysburg, and and we went to the Finger Lakes up there to see Aunt Edna. She was still around. Yeah. And had like chipped beef on toast or something.
Oh yeah, right.
Horrible.
And iced tea with one ice cube.
One cube, yeah. It was a definite Yankee way of cooking.
Boy, it was.
That would have been her grandma's aunt, right?
Right.
Okay, so her mother's sister.
Right.
Okay. I was trying to remember exactly who that was.
Yeah.
And then we drove on up into Canada just a bit through Niagara Falls. That was a good trip. I remember that.
I remember when we were up there before you were born. Jim was probably 6 or 7, and we'd been at Niagara Falls, stood in the mist at the top of the falls, looked at and all that, and then we went across the bridge back into the States, and there was a souvenir place there, and we stopped in to look around, and Jim turned around and looked out the window at the falls, and they were, hey, come here, there's Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it certainly is. You were just standing right at the top of it.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I've got several pictures of him from those scans that he does look a bit like a scamp. Yeah. He's got that look on his face like he's always up to something. There's several pictures of him probably at age 8 or 7 or so that he's sitting in the dirt and he's filthy, from foot to head and just doing stuff. And it just seems like that was his personality. Yeah. There's a lot of those kind of pictures. I need to get those out and bring them back to show you guys. Because I know I've scanned a ton of it. Yeah. All right. I think we're about wrapping this up. Let's see. Some of these things are just, how do you define a good life or a successful life? Life lesson. Seriously. That's kind of a question that has a lot of answers to it. Yeah. Because successful life. I think you've had a successful life.
I have had a very successful life.
You're not rich, but that's not necessarily successful in that term.
No, in fact, that's what we stood in Sunday school today. Blessed are you who are poor, for you shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. So, according to that, it's better to be poor than be
Yeah.
rich.
So we're in good shape now.
Yeah. Right.
You know, things for these kind of questions, philosophy of life, best piece of advice for living, all that.
Yeah.
That all goes back to Christianity.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that is the best advice. Yeah. That is the philosophy. You follow those rules and things pretty much will, you know, be okay. Because I've always found in myself, if anytime I stepped outside of that, those rule book type things, things don't go well. I don't know. I don't believe it's. I'm not like the guys, the preachers who think, you know, you just follow this and you'll get everything you ever wanted. No, that's not what's promised.
That's definitely not what's promised.
But your life will be better in general. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's what have you thrown away in your life that you wish you hadn't? What have you held on to that's important? Or what junk have you held on to and why?
Gosh.
So you don't really have a lot of...
Well, I have a lot of junk, actually. I got a lot of books.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, and you got some little milestone thing, like the Marston Misfits sign. I mean, that's just a reminder of those days.
Yeah.
You know, pictures and...
Yeah, I got a lot of pictures. I've got a large family.
True. Yeah.
I've been very blessed with that.
Yeah. It's not getting larger too. Getting larger.
And getting larger.
Andy's got another
coming. I think. Did they decide what it is?
I think it's a boy.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think I've heard, but I need to look and see.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Oh, Matthew is starting home now.
Okay.
He's in Halls, Tennessee right now. Yeah, so I mean, I guess for the record of this audio tape, so you and Mom had me and Bobby. I'm John Marston. Robert Brian Marston. Bobby had 4 kids.
Right.
Which was April Marston, Andy Marston, Adam Marston, and Ryan Marston. You can look up their middle names if you'd like to know.
Right.
So far, starting with the youngest, Ryan Marston has got 2 kids.
2 kids.
Landon, the little boy, and Anna, the older sister. Adam has got 2 kids, 2 girls. Scarlett, the baby, and Chloe is her big sister. Then you've got Andy, who's got 1 boy so far, named Grant, and we think another boy on the way.
Okay, right.
And there's about a 12-year difference,
right.
Much like you and Uncle Robin.
Yeah. And April hasn't had any children.
April's got no kids. She has a couple of dog babies that she's loves on. She's married to Randall Whitmore, who's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
They have a really nice place out in...
They do have a nice place.
Out in Eads, Tennessee area. The rest of the boys all live in Mississippi in various places. South Haven, Hernando, and is it Olive Branch? I think is where Ryan is now.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't know. They're all in Mississippi.
Yeah.
They're across the line.
Northern Mississippi.
Northern Mississippi. That's where Bob lives as well with Sheila. So, yeah, we have quite a few folks in our immediate family.
Yeah.
And, of course, I've got
2 boys.
The 2 boys, Matthew Marston, who is texting me as we speak about driving home from a tournament he's been at, and Joni, John Marston Jr. So we didn't get very original with the name. Just went with that. It was easy. And he's a little good little artist. He's been doing a lot of stuff.
I think he is.
He's working on some stuff. In fact, I'll show you some things on here when I finish this. So yeah, that's a pretty successful life, I'd say.
I think so.
You know, and then you got your extended family and friends from church, and it's just that is more successful, I think, than just being cut off from everybody.
Yep.
Um,
Of course, David's got 2 kids,
right.
a grandchild.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's little Mason.
Yeah, that's a year ago.
Yeah, he's what now, 3?
Mm-hmm. We'll be in first day of April.
Gotcha. So this is the only other interesting question, I think, and it may be difficult to answer too, though. If you were writing a story of your life, how would you divide it into chapters? Or what would the divisions be?
You know, that's interesting because I have tried to write a history of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off my birth early years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to my high school years, and then I would probably go to my married life and my sons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure. I guess then I would probably go to my second marriage.
Yeah.
And what that's brought to me.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be it.
Yeah. It's kind of the only other thing you could do is throw the work time frames
right.
into it, but from a personal life standpoint.
Yeah, I did. I think I did that too.
That breaks it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it is an interesting concept when you try to think about laying your life out on a timeline.
Right.
It's a different thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I was looking at the Ancestry.com that
Mm-hmm.
you realize that all these people are just kind of, they're blips on a timeline.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Unless you know them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's different.
Yeah.
That's kind of one reason I wanted to put this together, is just to have some other kind of additional information that you can add to this stuff, because it's one thing to look at the dates and the signatures on birth certificates and wedding announcements and obituaries and all that, but it doesn't really tell you the story of the person. And this doesn't touch on everything. Obviously, it's you can't fill a whole life into an hour and a half.
No, not hardly.
And all the stories that oh yeah, that reminds me. You can't come up with all that.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different to hear the voice, hopefully see the image.
Right.
Because I mean, 81, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it is impressive.
I mean, I'm
surprised.
I was going to say, is that something you ever thought you'd make it to 81?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that a number of times, even right in the last 5 or 6 years. I never really never thought about living as long as I have.
All right.
I'm ready to go anytime, but I'd like to stay around for another 3 or 4 or 5 years if possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the question. Is it's how you deal with the idea of a finality of it. Because I mean, I'm only 56, but I've had a few health things pop up that were uncertain, and you start thinking, if it's cancer, and I was like, oh gosh, what's that going to do? And you start thinking, gosh, what does it be like if I'm not here? Yeah. I'm not worried about myself. I've got that pretty well covered, I think. That is my hope.
Yeah. Right.
If everything I've read and believe is true, I should be okay. But you kind of think, am I going to be okay with that idea of not being here anymore, and how will that affect people around me and all that? And honestly, I don't know. I don't think about how old I'd be, when that time comes. It's like, can't imagine, because that's still quite a few years. 81 is a long time from now, from 56. So, yeah, I kind of wondered how you felt about it being this age, and
I'm very happy that I have made it this far. And like I said, I would be happy to go ahead for another 5, 6, 7 years. But if I don't, I don't.
Yeah.
And
Well, it seems like your brothers are hanging in there too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I keep up with Charles and Roxy somewhat through their things that they post, and I've talked to them a couple of times and called because I was in Nashville for some event, and I called them to see if they were maybe in town, and of course they weren't. But
they're in Florida,
so I got to chat with them. He looks so much like Grandma.
He does. Yeah, he's definitely got the.
He's got that Thompson face.
Side.
the face, the eyes, definitely looks like him. And Jimmy, I'm assuming, is doing well.
Yeah.
He pops in on Facebook periodically.
Oh, really?
But I mostly keep up with him through either Chris or Tim and Travis. Travis is calling a lot.
Oh yeah, Travis will call
you. He calls you. Yeah. And I'm still very much in touch with Sharon.
Oh, you really?
Yeah. She's on Facebook all the time, so she's one of the regular commenters on stuff that we post. So, you know, she seems to be doing great. And Travis lives with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew that. Robin is not on Facebook or anything like that, is he?
No, but Rebecca is his daughter, and she does. She used to post more. She doesn't that much anymore, and I think they live together in Knoxville. So, like when I posted all those pictures of Pop and whatnot, she responded that Robin loved them. You know, thought these were great.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't say anything specifically, and I didn't tag him in it because I didn't know if he's actually on or not. Yeah, I think Robin moved. They moved together down to Knoxville.
Somewhere out of Knoxville, yeah. Some small town up there.
But I have not seen or talked to him in years.
Joni lives in Fountain City.
Okay, so she hasn't moved far, or she maybe moved away and came back.
Yeah, she was. They were in Miami. That's where she and her boys lived there for lots of years, and her sons, I don't know where they are now, but she's got a set of twins, and so she decided she was going to move back up to East Tennessee and move to Fountain City. He was talking about the house that grandmother and granddad Marston had there in Fountain City. She said she's found it, and I think she said it's painted blue or something. I don't know. It's a brick house. I can't imagine it being painted blue.
Is it brick?
Yeah, as I remember, it's brick. I may be wrong, but that's what I remember.
I've got a picture of you with Mom and standing in front of a car that I thought at some point it had a caption under it saying that it was at Grandma Marston's house.
Okay,
but it was a white, it was black and white, so I can't tell, but it was a clapboard siding on where the driveway was. I don't know, maybe it may have been connected to brick. I don't know. It was interesting. That may not even be the right house. It may be.
That may be the house in Knoxville.
Yeah, I think it was in Knoxville.
That was a clapboard house.
Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah. So that's where I'm trying to put all these pieces together, where things were, who's were.
Yeah, that house. I don't remember the name of the street it was on, but it was a one-way street, a dead-end street, and the house was here, and then there was a driveway, and then there was an open field to the right of it, and that's where we get out and play when we visit.
With all the cousins.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I really remember family house-wise was the
was what?
With the house in Dandridge.
Oh yeah.
Uncle Ben, Aunt Mary.
Yeah.
It's been
that's a very memorable house.
A lot of good visits up there.
Yeah.
So it was 1795 or 6 or something when that was built.
Yeah. It was started.
Yeah.
I think it took probably 5 years to finish it. And of course, it didn't have the wings on it then. It was
just the brick middle. And it was also oriented to face the road.
Right, which is now the lake.
Right. Which used to be the French Broad River.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's we got married on the back porch there, and Thankfully, that was the last thing Uncle Ben. It was a big event before Uncle Ben passed a few months later.
Yeah.
Aunt Mary had passed not that long before.
Yeah, that's true. She had.
We kind of were right in between the events.
Right.
So yeah, but I love the old brick. That area has always been one of my favorite places to visit.
Yeah.
We used to camp down there on the
road
behind the house,
right
next to the lake, and Uncle Ben would play croquet and knock your ball down the hill if he could.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, they were fun. Aunt Mary and Uncle Ben. But I didn't know any of the other uncles, pops, brothers. They were all away, and we never visited up that area.
No, I never really knew them all that well. I didn't know Uncle Bill hardly at all. Uncle Dave, I knew him because he would come to Knoxville.
He would visit.
Visit Knoxville.
And he wrote that book.
Yeah, he wrote
a Marston book of sorts.
Yeah, and then Margaret has written a book, Being White, I think was the title of it, and it's pretty interesting.
Is she now? Margaret is who?
That's Uncle Ben and Aunt Mary's youngest daughter.
Okay, and there's Catherine
and Ruth.
And Ruth, right? Okay. And
Margaret was in. she left Tennessee quite early. She married some guy that ended up in Korea as a preacher, and I don't know whether they divorced when he was in Korea or whether they came back to Philadelphia area. But anyway, she ended up in New Jersey, and that's where she is now. I think at one time she was going to move back to the farm, but I understand that she's gone back to New Jersey now.
Yeah, I think who's at the farm now? It's
Ruth.
Ruth is there, but I know is it Catherine that's in bad shape? One of them.
Yeah, Catherine's in that Alzheimer's type.
Right.
Yeah, they had built that house up the road from.
Right. They moved it up the road a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't been there in several years. We drove by it when we took the boys up to see Gallenberg and all that. I don't think anybody was there when we visited. So that's the only family house I really know much about. Because the other ones in Knoxville I don't remember other than briefly when I was a little kid.
Right.
Grandma. And of course I didn't know where y'all lived in Jackson. So it was Royal Street. Did y'all live on Royal?
No.
Or that was Mom's
family
lived on Royal for a while.
We lived on Greenwood, which was off of Royal.
Okay.
North Royal. And the drugstore where I worked was on North Royal. Just about a block away from the house. 2 blocks away from the house.
So wasn't Mom's family's, I think her grandmother had a little grocery store or something.
In Trimmersburg?
No, and this my mom.
Oh.
Seems like there was a little store they had. Either somebody in their family had a store in Jackson at some point. I don't know if it was. Can't remember.
I don't remember any store.
I know they had one in Hardin, Kentucky. Papa's family for sure. But yeah, I'm trying to find information on some of Nana's brothers, and some of it I'm getting, but not a lot.
Bivens. That was their name, right?
Yeah. You know, we had Uncle Shemp.
Yeah, right, Uncle Shemp, right. I remember him.
And Ralph, who drove the bus.
Right, I remember that.
And so it was Ralph that had Jimmy.
Yeah, it was Jimmy's dad. Okay.
Bought the house from in Memphis in '63.
It amazes me we were able to buy that house for $10,000.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's funny that neighborhood though is changing a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Unfortunately, the guy who lives next door, or who owns the house next door, is Pennybaker's house.
Oh, okay.
That their garage, it's collapsing. It's completely falling in from the center in.
Oh gosh.
And that guy won't do anything to fix it.
Yeah.
And Miss Venus, who lives there, you know, she's an elderly black lady. She's afraid to raise any trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is unacceptable. You can't let this property just fall down around her ears. But
is she still there?
She's still there.
Okay.
She was talking like she was gonna move.
Yeah, that's what I don't remember you saying.
But I haven't seen her to ask her what's going on or anything. And I'm gonna ask her before, because I'm getting ready to call the city about that collapsing building. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I think we're good with all these questions that I had.
Okay. It's been interesting.
Yeah, no, it's fun to go through it, and you know, I think it might have been good too and I still might do this, bring over those albums and kind of talk through some of those while you're looking at them.
That'd be interesting.
And that'd help kind of
jar
some memories and also put names and faces with stuff.
Yeah, right.
So, all right. Well, I think we're done. We're going to call that a done thing. Only an hour and 48 minutes.
All right, that's not bad.
Your entire life in an hour and 48 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. That's probably right. Oh, man.